Do you want to bring balance to all the wireless radiation fields in your life, including 5G? The OMNIA Radiation Balancer is a small sticker you can stick on any device. It changes the state of the field and creates a new resonance between the wireless radiation and your energy field. On the link below, you'll see all our testing results that show how the body responds excellently once you've made this change in your life. And here's a special offer for the Journey to Truth crowd. Just enter the word truth in caps at the checkout for your 10% discount. It's easy to bring balance back to your body with the OMNIA Radiation Balancer.
Hey guys, welcome back to Journey to Truth podcast. I felt like I had to go back to the old intro just because Aaron and I are on separate screens again.
Yeah, we should use the old intro for this.
Yeah, exactly. If you guys can tell, Aaron has finally made his way to Portland, and this is just a temporary setup and until he gets some gear in the mail, which doesn't matter. It's still going to be just as good either way. So. And tonight we're joined by Alisha Braché, who we're going to learn about here in a few minutes. But I'm going to get into, I'm going to go over a few things before we actually get started. For one, you guys might have noticed that, man, this is weird without you next to me, Aaron. I gotta get used
I know, right? It's super weird.
For one, you guys might have noticed that we announced a conference that we're going to be putting on in the Midwest next May, Secret Space Conference. The details will be released soon. We're working on that right now. It's going to be awesome. I don't know how to explain it besides I can just feel it's going to be amazing. And I know you guys are going to have some fun too. Real quick, Hopewell Farm CBD, 10% off with promo code Journey to Truth 10. Teespring, 15% off with promo code CGI Joe. And we'll have some new merch coming up. I have an idea for a cool shirt we'll be working on, so stay tuned for that. Other than that, welcome to the show, Alisha.
Thank you, guys. It's so nice to be here.
Well, it's nice to have you. She's coming to us from Australia.
Yeah, so I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. Yeah, it's so weird to be on the other end of this. I'm used to interviewing you guys, so this is cool.
Yeah, so. Tell people who might not know who you are about your show and what you do and how you got into this.
Yeah, okay. So I guess going back, I've had Cosmic Gateway now for about 4.5, almost 5 years. It's a platform on social media. So I talk about various different topics, mainly around Ascension. My focus is generally around the energetic. So I talk a little bit about the Schumann resonance, space weather, based on my long journey of trying to understand the various different impacts that I was going through. I think it started around 2013, 14 for me, when I realized that there was something that was more external to my reality that was impacting me, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And then I started to look at things like solar flares and space weather, and starting to make the correlations between, excessive mental looping thoughts or emotional outbursts or, physical symptoms. And, and then obviously aspects of my own journey. But now I sort of write to keep people in the loop and update them to give them some context around things that they may be going through to help them on their ascension path, essentially. So that's just a short blurb about Cosmic Gateway. And also I have another platform, which is only, it's a little bit younger. It's about 2.5 years. I've had new Earth children, which is something that I was prompted to set up, and with the focus of talking about these new children coming onto the planet, and based around my own personal experience and what I do in my work and help support other people. So they're the sort of the two elements I have on social media.
Yeah. And you're doing some amazing work. And we were just part of your World Unity Week, which we did a roundtable with Allison, actually, and that was amazing.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for doing that, by the way. That was powerful. If you guys don't know what we're talking about, it's actually an event that she did on Facebook. I think now, since then, everything's uploaded to your YouTube channel now.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. You had some incredible speakers. Did you not get David Icke?
Yeah. I had David Icke. Yeah. That was
that's so amazing.
Yeah.
I watched it. It was so good too. Yeah.
I actually didn't watch it. I need to go back and check that out. Yeah.
He was a massive part of my awakening in back in 2012. So that was super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like anybody going through an awakening back then, I mean, would have found him.
Oh yeah.
Either way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think World Unity Week for me was such an incredible accomplishment to share like all the components that have made up my journey, people who have been influenced like yourself, Alison, David Icke, and just sort of brought it all together to share with the world, just to help people navigate these times. But I mean, David Icke, that was a real buzz to be able to sit down and speak with him and interview him, more just have a conversation. But I mean, David Icke, I stumbled across David Icke when I was growing up in high school, and yeah. So off the camera, I kind of made some jokes, and I was like, "Thank you for making me the crazy person in high school talking about, reptilians running the world." And he kind of laughed.
Yeah, and what's funny is there's a lot of people that still have a problem with that concept of reptilians. The more and more get into this, we get all kinds of comments and hate mail and stuff like that sometimes, and people think we're crazy. I mean, actually lately it's been ramping up on Facebook for me in particular, but it's funny. We just take for granted. We throw these terms around all the time when we talk about reptilians and Pleiadians, Sirians, Andromedans, all of them, grays. And then, as soon as some of that information hits like the mainstream, or just like somebody outside of this realm, I guess, it's like, holy shit, you might as well be the devil himself,
You're either crazy, or it's satanic. If they're super religious, you get a lot of that. Yeah.
I mean, that's
which I used to be, so I understand the mindset. I get it. But
so, Alisha, tell us, why are you here? So I know you're an experiencer. I know this all started for you. It was basically you had the dark night of the soul, and you came out of that. I know you were taken on some ships before, you were operated on. You have hybrid children experiences with that whole program. What you actually refer to as like cryptic pregnancies. You also talk about divine counterparts. There's a lot there, and I'd love to hear about all of it. And if there's anything that you're wanting to get out, that you're feeling compelled to talk about, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's so much to my journey, and there's so many different elements. And I truly believe that a big part of my work is trying to bridge sort of the disclosure community, the galactic, ET community and the spiritual community, because I feel like I have walked in both worlds my entire life. And I've been I guess you could say I was one of those children who was quite awake and tapped in and tuned in. I realized that I had healing abilities at a very young age, and psychic abilities and things like that. The experiencer part comes in at a much later time, but it's one of those things that you have what I call those holy shit moments where your whole life turns upside down and you realize that the reality that you thought was real is something else. And then you look back over your life and you realize, wow, this has been going on so much longer than just that experience. It was just that one moment where it becomes conscious. And so I guess my conscious contact experiences started around the end of 2015. And that, you know, that's just opened up a whole new world for me. And it's kind of really weird for me to talk about it now because it feels like it's such a long time ago. But it's still a journey that I'm on, and still very much a part of me. So if I go into some specifics, I had a very abrupt Kundalini awakening in 2015, which was catalyzed through a divine counterpart journey. And I'll kind of just make a side note here that, you know, that journey it is quite public. You know, people can go and find podcasts and things that I've spoken about that quite openly. You know, that journey has taken many plot twists and changes, and it's at a very different space right now. So it's still all very relevant and relative to this journey that I'm on, but it's a lot has changed in my life over the last 2 years. So if I go back to 2015, after the Kundalini awakening, that was when I started to have my conscious contact experience with galactic beings. And it hit me very hard and very fast. And it really, it catalyzed my dark night of the soul, which went for pretty much the duration of 2016, because I couldn't make sense of what I was going through. And what happened was that I was having very intense dreams. I'm a really avid dreamer. You know, it's been a big part of prophetic dreams all my life. And I was being shown these children that I would have, that I would physically, you know, come into this world. And I couldn't make sense of it at the time because I wasn't planning to have children. It wasn't a part of my world. I had just ended a long-term relationship, and I was starting to plan a new life. And I guess some of the situations that happened, or experiences that happened, you know, one night I started having what I would call interdimensional craft showing up. So I'd be out at a party or I'd be somewhere, and it would always happen late at night. And I would see this, it's kind of like a fluorescent green shape crafts kind of spinning, and then would like float down. And I wasn't the only one that witnessed that. You know, all the people that were with me saw that experience, but everyone kind of like turned and looked at me, and they were like, "What was that?" I was like, "I don't know." And they're like, "Well, that only happened since you arrived, so it's got to be connected to you somehow." And you know, from there, I started having experiences at night where I could feel craft flying above my house, and it was terrifying. I didn't know what to make of it, and I know that what would happen generally, there would be, I guess it's that very typical, you hear often, you know, feeling as though you're being watched, and then something occurs, and then a bright light in the room, and not remember anything. The next day, I have very little recall, to be honest, around being up aboard craft. I know when it happens. There's the signs that I know that happen in my physical body, and the kind of adverse reactions that I have upon waking. But it was around that time where I was intensely having dreams about these children, and at the same time I would wake up with scars and marks on my body. And so there was something that was indicating that there was something going on, and I couldn't really make sense of it at that time. So just to fast track a little bit around that continued for months. And I have a lot of very highly intuitive people in my life. I always have been surrounded by, you know, psychics and healers and things like that. And a lot of people kept saying to me, "Oh, you're pregnant, you're pregnant." I said, "Oh, no, not possible." You know. And so I went through, around that time, I went through what I call a interdimensional conception, where I merged with another person's energy essence. There was no physical contact involved. Although that person was present, the next morning I woke up and I had that same feeling that something had happened that I didn't understand. And I knew that my body had changed. And I think the most um, the sign that really indicated to me the most that something had happened was that being an energetic healer, and that's what I've done for many, many years, there was something different in my energy. When I was working on people, I was having this very high, almost like a rainbow energy that was like emanating through my work. And that was probably the first sign that showed me that something had happened. So it took me a little while to kind of understand, and I was being given and shown a lot of references around that time to Immaculate Conception, and being shown that was indeed what I was experiencing. And you can imagine the cognitive dissonance around that. I was never raised religious. That's not something that's ever been on my radar. But when I look back, I realized it was the only frame of reference that I had initially. So I was starting to go through those symptoms, pregnancy symptoms, but most prevalent to me was like the energetic expansion that I was feeling in my womb. And so I started researching, trying to understand what was happening to me. And during that phase of the dark night of the soul, I went through and I researched as much as I possibly could. I started to research about hybrid children, and I came across Bridget Nielsen at the time, I think.
Nice. He's awesome.
She was one of the first who started talking about that publicly, I think. At least she's one of the first ones who made some waves, Yeah. I'm sure other people were talking about it, but
yeah. So when I found her, I was like, oh my God, that's it. It started to give me some context around what I was experiencing. And I thought that I'd sort of found the answers. And then I realized that in the hybrid programs, a lot of these women don't actually give birth. And I was like, well, I feel that this journey for me is to go through and to give birth. So I had to keep seeking. And then, stumbling across, it's a very 3D term, but there's a lot of people that talk about cryptic pregnancy. It's sort of not an area that I dabble in because it's very dense and very confusing. Basically, in essence, it's a longer gestation period of women who feel that they're pregnant and it doesn't show up on any medical examinations.
You have all the symptoms and stuff. Yeah.
So that was another aspect, but I was probably more focused on the fact of interdimensional conception when I found there was very, very limited information back then to describe what I was going through. And when I found information around that, I think it was in a book by Drunvalo Melchizedek. It was just in one chapter. And when I read that was the thing that resonated with me the most.
Was it the Flower of Life book?
Volume 2.
Yeah, they talk about that in the first one, actually. That's what these like Lemurians were actually doing. They were teaching people how to conceive without actually having intercourse. And they were practicing this and teaching it to their society. So it's a real thing.
Yeah. So it was, and just to backtrack, I have a very strong connection to Lemuria. I always have. And in the lead up to what I call the point of conception for me, I was waking up and I was like being given like these messages. Sometimes I have a voice that kind of speaks to me in the morning. And it was telling me to look at Lemuria. So all of the seeds were planted for me. I just had to decode it and work out and understand it. So, So, just to fast track, I guess, from that point, I had to then understand from, the research perspective, and I dabbled into every rabbit hole you could possibly imagine. ancient aliens. I found one episode on there that was really helpful, and I was just taking in as much data as I could. And then I realized I got to a point where I could no longer take on information and data. I had to go within to really understand my own individual journey and what I was going through and experiencing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, Ancient Aliens helped a lot of us actually back in the day. I mean, it really did. If you think about its purpose on this planet, I mean, it really did spark an awakening for a lot of us. Very base level, but it was like, I remember watching it like with my jaw on the floor when I was younger, like, whoa,
Yeah, it's one of those great like gateway things to like start your awakening, but then you got to like go past it,
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll still be questioning it with them. Yeah.
Right.
And like they cut out James Gilliland completely from his own ranch when because he was telling them all about the Pleiadians and this group and that group and these beings and the whole everything, and they're like, we can't have this. They literally cut everything out.
Yeah,
and they just showed one ship, and they had like John Vivanco and his team remote view a being on it, which is cool, but that's all they did.
But that's
just how that show is.
They just focus on the ancient aspect of it, and then
James said they have to keep the questions. They have to keep it like as questions, like, are they real? Like, here's evidence, but is this real? So if you're like giving them answers, they don't want that, because then you're answering. Everything.
And then you give all the answers, nobody's going to tune in. That's how they get you back, Yeah,
I get it. It's a show. Yeah. They got to get you hooked.
So you spoke about, I heard the term, I think it was on one of your interviews or something. You talked about the womb actually being a portal for other star systems. That's actually really interesting to me. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess this goes through what I've tuned into my own body through this experience, and also like I work with a lot of women who are going through various different similar experiences, and quite often what I see is when I tune into their sacral or their womb, I can see, and some people talk about that there's a chakra, a womb chakra that sits at the back of the body, which sits somewhere between the sacral and the solar plexus. And it's almost like a portal that allows the soul to come in when a woman has conceived. That's just in very sort of physical terms, what I would classify as a 3D pregnancy. But what I see with women who are bringing in higher frequency children, it's almost like a direct link or portal from other star systems for these children to enter into that space. And, I probably need to share and make it clear at this point that this process that started in the end of 2015 or in the beginning of 2016 for me is still an ongoing process. My body changes. It still holds, the energy and sometimes the physical manifestation of these children yet to be born. And and it's what I see in that process is that because these children are coming from such a higher density, if you will, it's a big process for them to come into physical density. And it's like they will sort of come in and go out, and there was this process. So it's really interesting to see the individual experiences and read people's energy field in their body to access and gain information to understand this process better. Yeah.
So what do you mean when you say they come and they leave, they come and they leave? Like, at what stage of the development? Are you talking about like in the womb or like? Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I talk about it as an interdimensional pregnancy process, because it really is morphing from one dimension to another, and trying to, I guess, come down into physical form.
And Laura Van Tyne has actually spoke about her experience with, and this may or may not be true, but it might be true for her, is that she said it's possible for a child to be born and be without a soul for up to 2 weeks until that physical body is actually ready. Let's just say that the mother is in this low vibration. Maybe she was a drug addict or whatever, and they can't actually be in there all the time because of that density, because it's so dense. So they have to wait until they are far enough away from the birthing to actually enter the body. That's really interesting to think about. Sometimes you're looking at a baby and it's just like you don't see much there. It just kind of looks like nothing's there. Maybe that's the case.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And one thing that sort of comes to mind as you say that was one of those prophetic dreams that I had a couple of years ago, where I was walking. I call it a new earth dream because I know it's like in the future. It's that high definition color and light, and I was walking and talking with my daughter, who was probably about 14 at the time, and I was talking to her and asking her questions. I guess I became lucid in that experience, and I was kind of just saying to her, do you know how you were conceived? And to her, it was like so natural and normal. It was an energetic merging process that took place. And I looked at her and I said, do you know that nobody believed me at that time? Like, do you know how hard that was? You know, as your parents do, you know, back in my day kind of thing. And and I said to her, do you remember your time in the womb? And she screwed her face up at me and she said, I didn't like it very much. And
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you're experiencing now currently that I know you've told us off camera that you're going through some stuff. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience that you might think would be relevant?
That's you put me on the spot now.
Well, it's
to put you on the spot.
If you're comfortable, you know.
Yeah. Well, look, you know, a lot of people ask me this, and I don't talk about it a lot these days because it's still a process that I'm in, and I don't have all the answers, and I'm not at the end of it. But this process that began many years ago is still ongoing. You know, I still have all the physical symptoms of pregnancy. I look quite pregnant physically, so I'm always keeping the camera. To be honest, I always keep the camera, you know, so there's no full shot. It's hard to navigate 3D existence while going through this process, and for the duration of this has made me much more highly sensitive to energies, more so than I ever was before. So, you know, going through the tumultuous changes that are happening on the planet, you know, I have to keep my energy very clear, very clean. And, you know, I let go of timelines and time frames. I realize that there's a divine timing. I truly believe that when I talk about this, I talk about it to help other women who are also going through this process, to help them heal and understand. But I do believe that there's certain components that need to come into play in order for this process to be completed. And one of them is that the frequency of the planet needs to be at a certain stabilization of a higher frequency so these children can be born. It won't happen before then. And I think that's just going back to the bridging of the spiritual and the you know, disclosure community. I had a very vivid dream in the beginning that showed me a timeline of when that will come into actuality, and the the various components of that was that there was a burst of light that hit the planet, so you could look at that as like a solar flash or the event or a wave of light. I saw, and I didn't know anything about that back then. So when Alice & Co came out with her information, it was almost identical to what I'd seen in that dream, and it gave me hope. There was that component. I also saw at that time that there was massive changes happening on a financial level. There was a restructure of the financial system and government systems. And funnily enough, I don't share this often, funnily enough, there was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed leader in the United States who was helping everyone manage the changes, who was the president. So
interesting.
So, I share that because I had that dream in the beginning of 2016. And back then I didn't even realize that that particular person was even running for presidency. That I was so out of the loop of that stuff. So I guess I look at specific key markers to help better understand timelines for myself. And I've kept a very keen eye on all those components, solar flash and disclosure and the political stuff as a whole to gauge and to help me get prepared, I guess. It's the best way I can say it.
It all ties together, even down to the politics. If you're paying attention, it's a show. Obviously, clearly we're watching a movie at this point. So, I see so many people trying to make sense of everything right now, but I don't even think we should be wasting our time trying to make sense of something that we know is a movie. We know it's a show, and there's so much more going on behind the scenes. And that's just like you said earlier, you can only take in so much data and information before you just have to go within and figure out why you're here and what you're actually doing here. Yeah. And that's, so did you even get to the experience, or did you just dance around it with all that other stuff?
Sorry, can you ask that again?
No,
I'm good at dancing around, so you feel free to.
No, I was just asking you earlier if you were having any current experiences, like going through anything.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, on a daily basis. That's why sometimes I don't even know how to answer that question.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally.
My life's a trip.
Well, yeah, it's hard to even know. I was just talking to Abby Lynn. You guys know who she is. I was on the phone with her today, and I was like, it's so hard to, once you're an experiencer like this and you have all this stuff, it's so hard to go to lunch with your family or whatever, and not just want to jump up and leave and just get out of there. It's not feeding you anymore, and it's really it's really difficult to like you said, it's a trip. It's really difficult to be in this world right now, because these are the only types of conversations that we want to be having, but we can't have these conversations with everybody. So I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. So do you have any experiences with SSP, secret space program type of stuff? All right, let's hear it. Yeah.
Let's hear it.
I actually kind of knew this already. That's why I asked you that. But I want to dive into it a little more.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for you? Yeah.
It's really interesting because that's a relatively new piece of the puzzle for me that I'm trying to make sense of. As far as I can gather at this point, I don't believe that I am in the programs as such. Although I do have direct access to viewing through my dream space. I'm highly active in my dream space, very regularly. And this is something that's been ongoing for many years. And I think it started to really come into light for me around the end of last year. I think I came across secret space program information probably around 2016. And I knew, when you hear something and you hear a piece of information and it resonates, and then you're like, I don't know what to do with it, I'm just going to park it. It was kind of like that over the last couple of years. And it was back in, and that's why I'm so grateful for you guys, and I love the work that you do, because the more people that share stories, the more you can start to piece together your own journey and things start to make sense. And I had an experience where I woke up with a lot of very specific information around a 20 and back.
Really?
Yeah, but not my own. So that's where I have to be very, that's where I have to be very careful in how I share this information.
Let me stop you real quick. How do you know it's not your own?
Well, that's a good question, Tyler.
Well, because we've interviewed a lot of these guys, and it's becoming apparent that even when they claim it's not their own, it very well could be another aspect of them, even a clone. They have soul splitting technology, different timelines.
Like it's your consciousness in a different body, is what you're saying?
Yeah. So you might not even recognize the person as yourself, but it actually could be a version of you. And that might be how they even pull this off in the first place. It's very confusing, but anyway, continue.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I'm very open to claiming it if it is my own, 100%. I just can't speak definitively that I believe that it is at this point. But as we know, as we continue on our expansion of consciousness and more pieces of the puzzle come together, we understand it at a greater and greater level. From my own personal experience, I can honestly say that I go through phases where I go what I call being really tapped out. And I know that I'm highly active on some sort of a mission, but these are temporary. So it's not like a 20 and back. It might happen over a space of a week, a fortnight, maybe a month. And just to explain what that's like for me is that I'll be very active in my dreams, and I know that I'm out in space or off planet on some sort of a mission. Generally, it's a cleanup mission. And when I come into awake time, like when I wake up in the morning, I feel like I'm a diluted version of myself.
I know that feeling.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. And the cues that I have that I know that I'm not here, and the way that I understand it is that a high level of my consciousness is not in my physical body. I know that there's more of me out there doing something else. The most recent experience that I had that I can remember was probably a few months ago, where it was very specific around Mars and what was happening. And I think I reached out to you at the time, Tyler, because I really didn't know who to talk to or go to. I have a lot of great people in my life, but when it comes to SSP stuff, I don't have a lot of people that I can talk to.
What do you do now?
Yeah, I do now.
I do remember you reaching out.
Yeah.
So, would you mind elaborating on what you saw going on Mars?
Yeah, sure. So I guess at that time I felt like I had a session with Rebecca Rose at that time, because I was going through, how does she call it? I was going through a moment of crisis, and I was trying, I think the things that I was seeing on Mars at that time was so way out there that I really needed to check my own sanity. I needed to make sure that I wasn't completely losing and going crazy. And I was seeing operations being cleaned up, but I was also seeing clones being killed. Oh. And this is clones of people who I am connected with on a deep soul level. And that was quite traumatic for me to witness that. And I had been taken up around that time in front of a council of galactic beings, and they were telling me about the completion of a very specific involvement in the SSP in relation to me and someone that I'm closely connected with. And at that time, that basically they were saying that the contract has ended and that the fragmented aspects of the soul were coming back online to that person in their human body, and that a healing process would begin, and I was to help facilitate that process, which is something that I do in my work. So I guess it was a heads up for me. And it's funny, as I speak about that now, I haven't had a lot of those experiences since then. So maybe there is a part of me that is connected to that I'm yet to explore and unpack.
Oh, I'm sure of it. I mean, whenever you reached out to me that one time and we ended up having a session, I ended up having a session with you. There was some SSP stuff as well. And I mean, that wouldn't happen if you weren't involved, I don't think, So when you started this, when I stopped you earlier, you said you woke up with some very specific information surrounding the 20 and back. Did you already tell us what that was, or?
No, no.
Can you go into that?
Yeah, sure. So the information was basically how they do the age regression process, and how, I guess, similar to what I was just explaining to you, how you go through that phase of not really being incorporated or integrated and feeling tapped out, and basically showing me what a person's life is like while they're coexisting through various programs, and what that looks like on a human level. And anyway, the information was quite specific, and once again, it was one of those things that I parked, and I was like, oh, for a later time. And it was about a couple of months after that I was at my parents' house, and I walked in and my dad was watching your show back in January. Yeah. And it was Tony. And
nice.
It was in that moment that I walked in that what he was describing in his own experience was exactly the information that I'd got in that download when I was waking up a few months prior. So I just kind of was like, whoa, okay. So I sat down and I started watching, and I was like, hey, Dad, what's this? And he's like, oh, it's a SSP testimony. I was like, oh, okay. So I started watching it. And I guess it was at that point that I started to really start to pay attention to paying more close attention to the information that was coming through to me at that time. And so that was one component to it. So when I say this is relatively new within the last 12 months for me.
Okay.
And I had started writing a very lengthy article around counterparts, and I guess to help people better understand their own divine counterpart journey. And I was kind of making categories. I mean, I don't like to box things, but like to compartmentalize for the human to understand, especially in the work that I do. And I kept getting this like name, galactic counterpart. And I was like, it was something that I'd sort of dabbled in over the years of working with various different clients on a divine counterpart journey, seeing that some have a lot of earth human, soul journey together. And then some have a totally different frequency, and some very specifically have a soul connection from off planet. And so for me, just to compartmentalize, and I was trying to write that article, and I had writer's block, and I had this little voice said, go watch Journey to Truth. And I was like,
Hello.
I hope everybody has that voice.
Yeah. Me too.
I hope so too. And I clicked on, and you guys were doing a live Q&A. I think with Tony and Rebecca and
Johan.
Johan, yeah.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
That changed everything for me, because I clicked on that and I came in late, and at the moment I clicked on it, he was talking about, or you guys were talking about divine counterparts in the SSP, and
no way.
Yeah, Johan was talking about how they actually take these kids and put them together in the programs, and they basically raise them together and they do all their training together. So when they finally meet as an adult, there's this soul recognition there that they don't remember from the childhood programs. And that would make a lot of sense for some people listening to this.
Yeah. So after I listened to that, there was so many such specific details that I could relate to. And at that point in my entire work, it had never even crossed my mind about, counterparts being used in the programs. And it makes complete sense to me, when it was delivered in that way. Of course, when people share such a strong connection and they can feel and experience and witness what the other is in any moment, it makes sense. And I think there were things that Johan said that triggered a lot of memories of conversations that I'd had, over the years with a certain person. And it was at that moment, it was like the things that I had parked over many, many years sort of came into crystal clear vision for me to understand things a lot better. The things that hadn't made sense to me. So,
and there's another aspect that they actually were going to be getting into with next week's guest, who I won't disclose yet, but he has experience in the programs, and he specifically has experience in the twin program. They take twins, and because just like you said, the divine counterpart, it's better than a clone. It's better than anything because twins are basically the same, on the same wavelength. And there's actually a whole separate program where they specifically utilize twins. And it's a really, really good information. So we'll be getting into that next week.
I'm excited to watch that. Mm-hmm. I'll probably learn something and I'll probably get really highly activated.
Yeah. There's tons of, there's so much new information coming forward. We're just going to have to we're going to find ourselves keep going back to the drawing board. We're going to keep going back to the drawing board because we're like, wait a second, you think you have it figured out. Then all of a sudden this new theory, this new concept presents itself. That's why I like listening to Ivan Teller's channelings. As out there as it might seem, the new concepts that I gain from listening to him, I mean, it just broadens everything and gives you new perspectives and outlooks on things that we're not learning about from anybody. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool. It's just like expanding. Doesn't have to be real, but it helps you really not get married to any of these ideas,
Yeah. I completely agree. And I think the work that I've done in the space around divine counterparts is continually growing and expanding, and I'm learning new things. And I always say, I'll be honest, it was something that I never really wanted to delve into because there's so much hype around it and there's so much disinformation. And, I guess I've heard people use the term, PSYOP and things like that.
The twin flame PSYOP,
yeah. And I would agree with that.
That happens. There's a book called Alien Love Bite, and it talks all about that. Mm-hmm. These groups actually make two people falsely fall in love, and it's actually a one-way street. So one person loves this person, but they don't love them back, and they're having all these astral experiences. The other person's not, and this other person's heartbroken, and they're farming that loose. They're feeding off of that energy, and it actually creates like a triangle. It's like one person is in love with this person, but this other person's in love with that person.
Yeah, and even if it's not that, I've literally seen people use it as an excuse to stay in a very unhealthy relationship, or where like one person's clearly a narcissist and is being abusive and all the rest, and they're like, oh, that's just what they do, he's the runner, I'm the chaser, or the whatever. And it's like, no, that's an abusive relationship. That's what that is. But I've literally seen people, because they really want it to be true for whatever reason, you know, they would use the twin flame as an excuse. But I do believe it is a real thing. Like you said, there is the true divine counterparts that, but I believe you are able to feel the resonance of that, like the purity of that. And, you know, us that are on that level, we can tell when it's real, you know?
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. That's actually a great point to bring up.
Yeah, I'm glad that you both touched on that, because I do agree. And I think that was the hesitancy that made me want to do this work and talk about this topic, because you get all types, you know, and, you know, I think that was one of the reasons that I wrote that really long article to talk about it, because I always come back to two components that I think is the most important in terms of soul connection, is to understand the origins and the purpose. And when you can look at that, then you can, you know, work within your own ascension process to, regardless of what is happening in the physical, you know, if you can work in understanding like the origins of what your soul has gone through together, where it comes from, what, let's say, what sort of karmic implications you may have brought forth together to work out and learn and evolve through. And then also looking at what the purpose is, because a lot of the times there is a greater soul mission that is to be birthed through, you know, two people coming together, especially when they hold a higher frequency. And that in itself is, you know, the game-changing component. And I think that that's why counterparts are so important on the planet at this time, because they do bring in that frequency of unconditional love that is beyond space and time, you know, and transcends what we understand on a human level of love.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be heartbreaking and tragic. And so every journey is very unique and different. And I have seen some beautiful things. I've experienced some beautiful things. And I've also seen some really horrendous, you know, interference and you know, all, you know, dark and light in this sort of community.
Well, comes down to the spiritual war. It's a war. I mean, down to the individual, down to the experiences we're having. If you're not fully aware of who you are and who your guides are, who's helping you, you can be easily, you might be being tricked. That's what I'm trying to say, or fooled. It's scary, but you know, they're not dumb. They know us better than we know ourselves. And it's, you just have to be cautious. Protection, do the work. I mean, it's no joke. As we draw closer to this ascension, we're going to have to make this our reality. You know, we can't ignore this stuff.
Not at all.
So that's where you come in and say something next. But I know what you're saying. The interference is real. You know, that's all I was trying to say. I've experienced it. A lot of people have, actually. And it's important to know what to look for, because like Aaron said earlier, sometimes people think, you know, they're so married to the idea that this is meant to be. They might actually not be considering that they might be deceived, or, you know, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. And usually that stems from their own like unhealed trauma and wounds that, you know, it's like you got to heal first, almost, to like that, for that divine counterpart to like, you both have to be healed to a certain level to like come together, I feel like. You know.
Yeah.
And then that's when it's like just the beauty of the connection, once two like healed beautiful souls come together, you know, like that. It's like, it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like she said, that's needed right now. The love frequency,
very needed.
Is very needed. Maybe that might be somebody's entire purpose here. You know, that might be your mission, is to just live in that frequency. And man, those people are lucky. We're all here for our own reasons, for different reasons, you know.
Well, all the star seeds are just us being here are affecting the frequency. And like Dolores Cannon talks about that. Like she would have clients ask her, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And it would come through, your purpose is just to be. It's literally just to be here.
Yeah.
And just by you being here, you're affecting and raising the vibration, affecting others around you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't like that because they wanted like a specific thing. And not saying that you can't also have that, but that's like our main purpose is just us being here. We're raising the frequency and affecting the planet and everyone here on a deep level, whether we know it or not, or whether they know it or not, you know.
Beautifully put. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, we always strive for wanting that purpose. Like we want our life to mean something. We want to find some reason, something to live for. And I get that. Because of the world and the state of the world right now, it's really tough to walk around and not start questioning things. Mm-hmm. So I get that. But if you can get to the place where you realize, yeah, all I need to do is just be the best version of myself all the time, and then
just follow your heart and what pulls you towards like your passion and your heart and it's really that simple. It's really that, because so many people are stressing out and you're like, what do I need to be doing right now? Oh my gosh, and if you're doing that, you're off track already. Like, just follow what you're naturally drawn to and what you're passionate about and what your heart leads you to. And that's what you're going to have the most impact, because that means that's what you're resonating at that level,
Mm-hmm. Get out of your own way. Get out of your head.
Yeah. Get out of your head. Get into your heart.
That's what a Native American says. As soon as we, I've talked about this before, the three brains, the gut, the heart, and then their brain. It says as soon as you leave the gut, you're already basically on the wrong track. If you ignore the gut feeling and you start overthinking it, and they said that's where mankind has gone wrong. We overthink everything. Most people are all
up here and none of this, or very little of this and none of the gut, or it's mostly all. That's what we're programmed. We're programmed to be, and that's when you look at all society and the programming. It's all to keep you in your logical mind only.
Mm-hmm. And that's why so many people fall for some of these shills, because they're operating in that state, and they're only picking up on the information. But they don't have the ability to feel the person's energy. If you can actually tap in and feel the truth or feel that person, you don't even need to hear what's coming out of their mouth. You can hear what they're saying just by looking at them. And most of the time with certain people like Austin Steinbart, I'll just say it, like that's what's happening. And I don't care who gets triggered by that. That's exactly, people are wowed by the information. And if you're only taking in the information, you're not going to actually see that, there's something majorly wrong here, and it might not even be his fault, but there's something going on there, mind control or something.
Exactly. Beautifully said. Yep.
Yeah. So Alisha, tell us about the new Earth. I know you have some theories. I know this is something.
Tell us all about the new Earth.
Well, you talked about in one of your interviews the ancient ways coming back to bring us into the new Earth. We have to get back to what we used to know. And it's just something that I think we should discuss.
Yeah. Oh, my favorite topic. My absolute favorite topic. Look, New Earth is here already. You can feel and see and tap into that, through your own vibration and frequency. But I guess what we're striving for and working towards is for all of humanity to be able to be in that frequency and experience it. I think my work with New Earth children is that I think that for people like myself and women going through this journey, we're, as a part of that process, we're really anchoring in new frequencies to not only birth children, but birth new energies to help Gaia herself go through her rebirth and ascension process. I think that's why I love a lot of the work through BQH sessions, especially with Alice and Co. and things like that. I can say almost I love how in sync I am with her, because quite often I'll see things through my dreams or through sessions, and then she'll post a video, within a few days or a week, and it's almost word for word verbatim, like what I've experienced. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's so cool.
I'll let her know that. Cool. Well, she'll watch this, So yeah.
But I think that it is, I mean, going back to talking about Lemuria and the ancient ways returning, you know, my process of, you know, interdimensional conception and pregnancy and birth is just one of the components of new way of being and new ways that are coming through that aren't new at all. They're actually ancient, you know, that they've existed on this planet when we were vibrating in a higher frequency. And I think we're returning back to some of those aspects, maybe not all of them. I don't think that all those civilizations that were in a higher vibration on Earth were perfect. They had their flaws. So it's like a refining process of what have we learned through the dark ages and the dissension process, and how we can take the best of, you know, higher civilizations and bring it back to where we're heading as humanity itself. And definitely there's a lot of components of our star brothers and sisters that are assisting this process through us, or, you know, we are those aspects embodied on the planet to make that come into a physical manifestation. So I guess that's a very general way of speaking about it, but I guess through, you know, I've been challenged so much on this path, especially in the last 5 years. And I think a lot of people can relate to the challenges that we go through, personal hardship on various levels. But I think one thing that always pulls me through and guides me through is the visions and the dreams that I've had about New Earth, and knowing that that is a reality that we're moving towards. And that's why we go through some of the darker phases and the hardships, is because, you know, each person's experience when we go through, you know, deep clearing of ancestral trauma, or deep clearing of past life wounding, or whatever it is that is in our own process to be cleared and neutralized, we make waves within the collective field, you know, and we all work as one entity in some regard to restore the balance.
Yeah. I think so. Absolutely. Do you think, okay, like, this is the big question everybody has, like, what does the transition look like? I know we've discussed it before. A split, an event, it's kind of like maybe just down to the individual. It might look different for all of us. What are your thoughts there?
My thoughts have changed a lot over the years, and I think that, you know, I spent a lot of time thinking about this stuff. And I think initially it was very much around an event or a solar flash and something happening very instantaneously. Not that I don't think that is off the potential playbook. You know, I think that is a possibility. But I'm kind of in a space of being in the unfolding, and also seeing how it plays out. I think that, you know, there is also that, you know, option of the split, and you can feel that. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've felt that for years, the literal splitting of moving into one frequency bandwidth and another. I remember a couple of years ago being in a very heightened state. And I remember I was like looking out on the forest that sits in front of my house, and I was literally seeing reality as New Earth in front of my eye, physically in front of my eyes, that like real pristine, crystalline, everything glistening, high definition color. Like I was being able to see through the veil and see into that reality, New Earth reality. And so, you know, I truly believe that it is access to us all when we're in those heightened states. But the actual key to it all is that we have to implement it and ground it into physical. It's not just when we're vibrating high, you know, we can all have those, you know, way out experiences, but it's about integrating into the physical so that it's and accessible for everyone. So, I mean, that doesn't really answer your question, I know.
Well, there was no question, really. I was just wondering what you thought it would look like, but you did answer. I mean, there's a potential for all of it to happen, I think. Yeah.
And I think the timelines change, to be honest.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see the trends, the event, solar flash, timeline splitting, and it's like we all collectively link into the trends as one of the timelines is most predominant in that moment. Then something happens, like, the global situation of the last 18 months.
Yeah.
It changes the timeline again. And
Well, it's interesting. The reason I was talking to Abby Lynn today is because she called me, or she left me a message saying she had a session with somebody and she just had this amazing download. She had to tell me about it. It was about New Earth. The person in the session wanted to know if they were going to be able to meet their star family and went in the New Earth. And what came through was that, unfortunately, yes, they're going to meet them, but these Pleiadians, these groups of people, maybe not Pleiadians, but some of these groups actually can't come here because of the environment, even when we do transition. But what they will be able to do is they have like avatars growing in like liquid pods, basically humans, and they're going to be able to basically take over one of these vessels and actually come here in human form. So, and they'll look just like us, but they won't have amnesia. And it's going to be like your Andromedan brother or sister here helping us, but they're going to be from somewhere totally different, but they're going to be in a human vessel. They're growing vessels basically, so they can come here and be here with us. And they said it doesn't matter that they won't look like what we're used to seeing them like when we have these experiences. We're going to recognize the soul. And she was like, I guess this was like a whole new concept that she had never heard of or thought of. And it just came through this session today. And I was like, actually, that resonates. I could totally see something like that happening. So when the ETs actually come, they're going to get off the ships and like, you look exactly like me. What's going on here? Like, yeah. Like, no, we had to come in this form because this is what we have to do. But she did clarify that not all races would have to do that. Just depending on what density they're at.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's just something to think about. Really interesting.
That's fascinating. Well, hopefully I'll have more to share with you guys. I have a session coming up in a few weeks, a BQH session. It's been a while since I've been under, and I love to go in and kind of like access a lot of information of like the most current timeline that we're on and where where we're heading as humanity and how it's going to unfold. I've seen multiple possibilities over the years.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the biggest thing to me, like you already said, is the timeline change. I feel like we might not be on the event solar flash timeline anymore. Maybe we are. Maybe it'll come and when we're all least expecting it, we'll think we're off the timeline and then bam, we get hit. Who knows? Who knows?
I will share this with you of something that's happened to me recently. Probably for months now, I have been what I call very human, which is very foreign to me, especially over the last few years where I felt very more galactic than I have felt human, and normally I resist it. I don't like it. I like to have sort of the multidimensional experiences, but it's been very grounded, very solidified, I guess is another word. And one morning I was outside just drinking coffee, just pondering and wondering why I was going through this phase. And what came back to me was, this is not a phase. This is kind of get used to it because it's going to be here for a while. It's not going away anytime soon. And I think the real focus has been on the physical body, preparing the physical body. And I have woken up probably a handful of times between now and then. So in the last 2 months, hearing that you're being prepared for the solar flash, your body's being physically prepared and upgraded to be able to take in the light of the solar flash. Now, when I say that, I take that with a grain of salt. I take any message with a grain of salt, because I know how in flux things can be. But one thing that I also feel is that I don't think everyone will go through it and experience it in the same way or at the same time. And one of the BQH sessions that I had a couple of years ago showed me that I was in a space, living in a different home. My children were already here in physical, had been born, and I was experiencing what we would consider the event. And when, you know, how they probe around and ask questions, and they were like, is this the, and I was like, this is the second event, like this is the second flash. The first one's already come and gone. And in that space, I was aware of it and experiencing it, but the people around me were asleep. When I say asleep, like literally physically asleep, they did not know what had taken place. I mean, so that's another possibility too. You know, depending on people's energy and consciousness, they're going to experience that differently.
Well, yeah, if you never even heard of the concept of an event or a solar flash, then yeah, you're going to be one of those people who are sleeping. I mean, that's just the reality of it, I'm sure. It's very interesting, that whole the sun in general. And, you know, some people like, I feel like it's changed. I remember like the event coming from like this galactic central sun. And then some people are saying, no, it's coming from our sun. And
well, I've heard it is, but our sun will be affected by that also. So it's kind of both.
But like it's so many so many people like study our sun, and they're like, no, I don't see it in this cycle. Like it doesn't matter. Like they don't see it. Like they're using like the past basically to predict the future, and like they don't even see it like something that major coming from our sun. So they're like, no, that whole theory is bunk. But I think I told the one guy way back when I was married to the idea of the event, I was like, he did this whole video on why it wasn't going to happen. He was a brilliant guy. And I just commented on the YouTube video. I said, you're studying the wrong sun, dude. Because at the time I thought it was coming from this galactic sun. And, but yeah, you guys said the sun is a portal.
Yeah.
It's so true. Basically I was listening to somebody, can't think of his name, but he said like every black hole on the other side of every black hole is a star in another universe, which makes that star a portal. And that's exactly what's happening with our sun. And people are like, well, it's too hot. And he's like, well, that's the whole psyop. Our sun isn't hot. It's cold fusion. It's light and gas. And then Corey Good said the same thing whenever he saw that he said, it's like, imagine one of those balls that you put your hand on and it has the electricity. He said that's basically what the inside of our sun looks like. It's electric. It's a cold fusion.
Electric.
Yeah, it's not this like.
It doesn't mean it's hot.
Yeah.
It's not and like a ball fire.
That's why like it's cold in space. The higher you get off the surface of the Earth, even in our own atmosphere, it gets colder. Why is it only
getting hotter? It doesn't make any sense.
Why is it only getting hot? Why is it only hot on the surface? And he explained that's because of the light reflecting off the surface on our atmosphere. Basically, our atmosphere is what creates the heat.
Yeah.
Without the atmosphere, it's cold. That's what. And he said, you know, he went on to say that like Mars has an atmosphere still. Whatever they tell you, it's a lie. He's like, there's definitely
Mars and the moon both do.
Yeah.
So, yep.
And then he said the moon is a space station that was brought here, which we know.
Even though that's
yeah. But it's really interesting to think about that type of stuff. And he said, it's hard not to find, if you're really researching in the right places, it's hard not to find what look like ships coming through our sun. On there's so many photographs and footage of that. So whenever we think of this solar flash, it's like, it might mean, but obviously there's some radiation involved, and that's something that actually has to be considered, but it's not what we think. The sun isn't even what we think it is. I don't know. Just something to think about, right?
So many things to think about. I think a couple of months ago, when I was highly active in my dream space, one of them I do recall as you're talking, and it makes so much sense to me, was I actually went to the sun to get a sample. It was almost like a test tube of plasma, and it was electricity like, and it was kind of blue. And that was kind of weird for me, because you would think that if I was taking a sample from the sun, it would look white or, yellow. And it was not. It was kind of a blue shade, and it was kind of electric. And I can't tell you any more details. I have no idea what that was about, but one of the many.
Yeah. What are we really doing up there every night, right?
I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, what have we been going for, like an hour and 15 minutes?
Hour 15.
So I know for people who don't know, you do sessions, you offer sessions. Would you mind walking us through what one of those sessions actually looks like for the people who might want to book with you?
Yeah, sure. So I offer a wide range of sessions, but generally my focus is on what I call energy alignment. So during my conscious contact back in 2015, I've been doing hands-on healing since I was a kid, and then it sort of progressed. I learned and studied different modalities, but every time I was like, oh, why am I here? I kind of know this, and over 10 years, I started following what I was being intuitively guided to do, which kind of worked better. And I can see the progression of it over 10 years. It built up to this techniques that I use now. And I was downloaded at that time. That was when I heard during the sessions, you're now channeling the Arcturian ray. And I had absolutely no idea what that was. So I would tell the clients and they'd be like, what's that? I'm like, I have no idea. But that coincided with all the things that I discussed earlier in the interview. And so I work with what I would consider very much I work a lot with Arcturian energy. That is like one of my primary kind of galactic components or aspects. I do a wide range of things. So I can read, I can soul read, I can read into people's energy field and their memories. So I normally go in and access a lot of information that is relative to them at this time in their soul's path. But I do energetic adjustments, psychic surgeries, things like that. It's growing and developing all the time, which is really kind of cool. I love the work that I do.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, what has kind of, I feel that I attract the clients that obviously resonate with me, but generally people, like you were saying before, show up in my reality when there's a shared experience there. That's just how it works.
You attract them. You attract them, or you hunt them down like you did me. You're like, hey, listen, bro, you gotta do a session. Something's coming through. Yeah.
Yeah. Occasionally I'll get that, and I try and ignore it, but it like haunts me for days, and I know that won't go away. And I know there's always a reason for that. So I just trust. But yeah, I mean, since the SSP thing has opened the door in my life, I find that I'm starting to attract a lot of people who are bringing back their memories and starting to unpack that and helping people through that process of soul retrieval, so on a galactic level. There's a process that I do that is like called soul or star mapping, where I can kind of read into the field of different components of them and help embed that almost like a soul retrieval.
Well, and you also, what you did for me was you removed a blockage. You removed the blockage that something was stopping me from remembering. And if you remember, I don't know if you remember.
I don't remember.
Yeah. So something was removed, and you told me like usually within 3 to 5 days or something after that, people you start to get memories back. And I was kind of waiting for it to happen. Nothing happened. Then as soon as I forgot about it, I did in fact have what I could only describe as a memory coming back of being on Mars. And I've actually never shared this one publicly. The only person I've told about it was Tony Rodriguez. And when I told him, his eyes lit up, and he's like, dude, I've seen that basically.
Really?
He's like, you're describing exactly what it looks like there. And he was like, we need to talk more. And that's how we ended up talking. But yeah. So, and then that was it though. It was like a one-time hit, and I never got, I have had some stuff since then, but that one just seemed like it was like right on time with what you said. It was interesting. So there's also that you offer.
Yeah. I mean, I think the one thing that I do remember, your energy was so fascinating. And I think the one thing that I remember, because I do this there's a lot of different techniques and tools that I work with. One is called consciousness rewiring. So it's sort of like I go into the neural pathways in the brain and look at where there's blockages and things like that. And when I went, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but when I went in and I was going to do that process on you, that was where I could see energetic layers of screen memory. And that was when I said to you, do I have permission to try? And I don't know if I can do it, but I'll try to be able to remove some of the screen memory, because I know as experiences, that's a lot of the things that we have to contend with, is having different memories implanted that aren't the actual memory of what was occurring. So, I haven't done anything like that since, but I can kind of get the sense of that.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was like something you did all the time. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. Like it was so natural when you did it.
I always say that working on a person is so individual. So it's never one session is the same. And I guess I just have the confidence now that I can, work with the guidance of my team, but also the people that I'm working with, and what is in the highest best good for them. And I know that a lot of these memories can be ultimately very traumatic for someone, and if someone's not ready to unpack and process it, I know that there's kind of like a safeguard. It doesn't matter what I do, it's not going to happen if that person's not ready, or if it's not in their highest good. So
well, it's really I think you should explore that more, because it was actually helpful for me.
I've thought a lot about this year about things that I'd like to do on a greater scale to help support experiences, especially those in the programs. Obviously that called me unexpectedly. I didn't see that was going to be a part of my journey, but as it's unfolded, it is highly part of my journey. And I think what I love is that people can come and tell me the weirdest out there stories, and I never bat an eyelid because of my own journey and how out there it has been. So, people can tell me pretty much anything. And obviously, I have my level of discernment and truth, and, listening to, is that a trauma-based, perception, or is that, actuality and things like that. But so, I do primarily energy work and like psychic work. In a session, I guess that's what people can expect. But my background is vast and varied. I'm a qualified holistic counselor. I was a regressionist for many years. So there's a lot of components that I've done throughout my life that's kind of fused and melded. Yeah, what I do now.
Yeah, and you're right. You're right also about the screen memories we were talking about earlier. That's a real thing. Like some people will go into a hypnosis and they'll keep going back to this one memory and they'll think that happened. And that's something that we have to come to the reality that this might actually be a screen memory blocking the real experience. Yeah. And even the movie Total Recall kind of touches on that. You sign up for it and they give you all these fake memories of a time on another planet or whatever else. And the whole plot is that he actually did spend time on Mars, but then they were trying to give him these screen memories and whatever, something along those lines.
I have to go and watch that, because that's the third time this week someone's made reference to that.
Like his wife and job, and that was all fake, and then he realized it and freaked out. Yeah.
So basically, he had spent time in the programs on Mars. And then he came back to Earth, and they tried to cover it up by giving him these screen memories of this fake life. They gave him a wife here, a home, and a memory of a lifetime here on Earth. So he thought all this was real when his wife was actually was just some agent working for this company to keep him from remembering what he actually did on Mars.
Yeah.
So then he goes to this Total Recall place where you're supposed to, it's like they offer vacations. Like you can actually have memories of being somewhere else. And it seems so real. You felt like you were there. And I'll just let you watch the movie, but it's really,
that is on my to-do list this week.
It's total disclosure of the SSP or age regression type of stuff. And then there's a remake in 2012, Total Recall. I recommend watching both of them. Yeah.
Okay. Put them both on my. Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start wrapping it up. This was incredible. Thank you. We touched everything.
Yeah, we did.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. Do you have anything coming up that you want to share with us before we go?
No, not at this stage. Nothing specific, but yeah, I hope that this conversation has helped someone out there. And you know, I think that it's as hard as it is sharing personal stories. I really encourage people to find the bravery to come out and talk openly when they feel compelled to, and overcome, you know, fears and things like that, because I know that in my process of speaking publicly about these things has really changed my world in beautiful ways. And the way that I have been received from what my mind or ego wanted to tell me of, like, the, you know, people will discredit you and ridicule you and all that sort of stuff. My experience has been very, very different since I came out publicly in 2018 and talked about some of these things. And it doesn't matter what your journey is like. It's all very individual, but it all comes together in the one process of where we're all heading as, you know, human race into New Earth. And I think the more that people share and open and transparent, it helps us all heal and put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Where can people find you to book?
Cosmic Gateway. So it's Cosmic G and then the number 8 way.com is my main website, and also New Earth Children, but that's still being developed at this point. So Cosmic Gateway is the best way that people contact and find me. And
that link will be in the description. So thank you so much for doing this. It's weird going back to the original way, Aaron. Separate screen.
Old school.
We'll get. It threw me off at the beginning. Sure. I didn't even know how to introduce the show. I was like, no, but it's a new chapter. It's a new chapter. So, and we don't plan on missing a beat. So, we have a lot of work to do. We're excited about this upcoming conference. You guys will be hearing more about that soon.
I'm excited too. If it means that we can travel somehow, some way, I'll be there.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Who knows what it'll look like in May? Who knows what it'll look like in May? But you know, it's all coming together pretty effortlessly. So I know it's meant to be, and it's going to be a good time. So yeah. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. Thank you guys for all your support, all the donations, all the love, the beautiful comments and emails that we get from you guys. I say it over and over again, but we can't do this without you, and you're the reason we keep doing this. So thank you for that. We love you guys, and have a great night.